Hello, students. Welcome back to your history class. So up till now, we've completed this chapter, and today onwards we start with the question and answers. You all already know the drill. You all will sit with your notebook, your textbooks, and your writing material. In this chapter, we focused on England in the 18th and 19th century. We discussed about the innovations and the technological changes that took place and also the patterns of growth. We saw the emergence of a new working class, and then we also spoke about the debate that the historians have whether if there was an industrial revolution or not. The objective of this chapter was to understand the nature of growth in the period and its limits, and the debate on the idea of industrial revolution. In this chapter, we spoke about three important terms, that is, industrial revolution, protective tariff, and laissez-faire. Now, in industrial revolution, the, it the term industrial revolution stands for the developments and the inventions which revolutionized the techniques and organization of production in the later half of the 18th century. The industrial revolution replaced the domestic system, okay, with the new factory system. So, in place of animal and manual power, now new machines and steam powers were being used for producing things. This revolution replaced the cottage industry by the factories, the handwork by the machine work, and the craftsmen and the artists by the capitalists and the factory owners. So this was what is industrial revolution. This is how much you will mention. Then the term protective tariff. The term protective tariff refers to the imposition of heavy taxes on imported goods to check their import and protect the interest of the local manufacturers. Also to save the valuable foreign exchange. This practice of protective tariff is used by almost all countries to protect the growth of their own infant industry. So, imported goods are heavily taxed, okay, so that they are not available at a cheaper rate than the local produce. So, this is a tariff that is put to protect your own local industries. Then, laissez-faire. The theory of laissez-faire, or let us be alone, it favors a policy of non-interference in the sphere of business and industry. This theory was propounded in 1776 by the English economist Adam Smith in his famous book, The Wealth of Nations. He supported the idea that the government ought not to impose any tax on imports, nor should they pass any law to regulate the trade and commerce. So, according to this theory, uh, business and industry should be left alone, and no government law or any policy should be against them or for supporting them. It should just be left to be regulated on its own. Okay, so these were the three important terms of the chapter. Now we will look at the effects of industrialization on the different structures or the different sectors. The first one is agriculture. Now remember, this is answered in 30 to 50 words. This is 2-mark answers. So you should write at least 2 important and elaborate points. Okay. Now, with industrialization, the demand for raw materials grew very rapidly, and this forced the cultivators to adopt new methods to ensure more production. So, new machines were invented for digging the soil, sowing the seeds, reaping the harvest, and thrashing the corn. New crops were also sown, and chemical fertilizers were developed for a bumper harvest. Means of irrigation were improved, and new breeds of farm cattle were developed. These and several other techniques ensured more food for the growing population and more raw material for the growing industries. So then another way they can ask you this question is also how uh, how did agriculture meet the demands of industrialization, or how did new technologies ensure more food for growing population and raw material for the growing industry. So there are different ways that this question can be asked, but these were the effects of industrialization on agriculture in short. Then, effect of industrialization on the means of transportation. Industrialization also affected the means of transport. Macadamized or pakka roads were built for the safe and fast transportation of goods. Navigational canals were dug up so as to carry goods and passengers. These canals were also used for shipment of coal from the mines to the factories. The steam engine was used to run railway trains and steamships, which sailed across the ocean. The rapid development of these means of transport made quite easier the transportation of finished goods and raw materials to any quarter of the world. So you will talk about all all the uh, revolution, all the new inventions of in transportation and infrastructure because of industrialization. This is also a 2 mark answer, and this can also be asked for 4 marks or 8 marks. How does industrialization affect communication? Now, necessity is the mother of invention, and industrialization made people feel the necessity of better means of communications. With improved means of communication, sending and receiving of messages became easier. The invention of telegraphy and telephone have brought such a revolution in the field of communication that now anybody can keep contacts with distant places while themselves they're sitting miles and miles away. So, because of industrialization, people needed to communicate with each other, especially when they were distance apart. And so, new modes of communications were found. Sending and receiving of messages then became easier. Telegraph, telephone, these were the revolutions in the field of communication. Next is, how does industrialization affect trade? Large scale production, because of rapid industrialization and improved means of transport and communication, encouraged trade. International trade also grew because now it was easy for any industrialized country to import raw material and to export the finished products to any part of the world market. Industrialization has unified the entire world, especially in the terms of trade and commerce. So, because of industrialization, now lot of production took place, and because of the new modes of transport and the revolution in the transport section, these productions, these goods, they could reach the different parts of the world. Next is education. I think that question has been missed here. Please write it down. How does industrialization affect education? Yeah, it's the third question over there. Okay. So now there was more capital, more laborers, and there were also more raw materials that were the essential requirements of all industrialized economy. And for this purpose, we needed more education. So besides international trade, which required the knowledge of foreign language to facilitate the international contracts, education also became necessary, especially to learn the mechanism and the working of the new machines. In this way, industrialization it inspired people to get more education. Then there is affect the cultural life of people. The industrialization also gave impetus to literary activities and it deeply influenced the contemporary literature. It gave new inspiration to the poets and the writers. They made deplorable and miserable conditions of the workers in the factories as the subject matter of their poems and writings. They placed a touching pen portrait of their wretched life before the people. The artists they made cartoons depicting the miserable conditions of the women and children working in the factories. The deserted village and the village schoolmaster, these are the chief literary productions of this particular period. Next is what were the most favorable conditions for industrialization? Now, there are quite a few conditions that favored industrialization. Some of them are sufficient capital, natural resources like coal and iron ore, plenty of raw material, markets where the finished goods could be sold, developed shipping industry, cheap labor, energetic and enterprising people, favorable government policy, political stability and peace, sources of energy like oil, coal, electricity, suitable climate. These were some of the important factors that assisted the growth of industrialization. Next is how was the use of steam as a motive power? So, up till now, all machines were run by water power, wind power, or horsepower. Invention of steam engine by Newcomen was a very important step in the field of industrialization. It was used for pumping water out of coal mines. James Watt, he made improvements and perfected it. His steam engine was called Beelzebub because it could not only be used for pumping, but it was also being used for spinning and weaving machines in the textile industry. So the steam engine became the center of modern factory systems of production, which was the throbbing heart of every industry. Later on, electricity was used, and this was invented by an Englishman, Michael Faraday. Now, what led to the revolution in art and smelting iron? Iron is indispensable for manufacturing machines. Iron ore is obtained from mines and it has to be purified and strengthened before use. Before, wood charcoal was used for smelting iron, and that was a very costly affair. In 1709, Abraham Derby he discovered smelting iron with coke. Henry Court later invented new methods of rolling the iron, and Bessemer invented a new method of removing impurities and making steel. This invention of steel helped the manufacturers of strong and accurate tools and machines. What were the challenges faced for smelting iron? Extracting of iron from the mines involved two risks. The first is that these mines they were often filled with water and it was very difficult to work with them. Sometimes these mines used to burst when the coal gases caught fire. And so Thomas Luckman invented a machine to pump water out of mines. And later on in 1850, Humphrey Davy invented the safety lamp, which enabled the miners to do their work very safely. So these were how steam was being used as a motive power. And later on, what led to the revolution of smelting iron. How did revolution came in the means of communication? We've spoken about this initially, but that time we spoke about the effect of industrialization on communication. Now we are talking about the revolution in means of communication. So Morse, he invented the method of sending messages through telegraph wires. The first electric telegraph came into existence, and 16 years later, the first underseas cable was laid between England and France. In a few years, telegraph system spread throughout the civilized world. Postal services started in 1840. Bell invented telegraph in 1876. As a result of this inventions, the news which used to travel very slowly from one place to another could now be flashed quickly from one end to another. And today, it's even quicker than flash. It's even faster than blinking your eye. Today, communication has reached completely new heights. Okay, so these were all the short answers. These were all the 2-mark questions. Tomorrow we will discuss 3 to 4 mark questions, 5-mark questions. So with this, children, I end today's class. I hope you all have made the note. Meet you all next time. Till then, stay home, stay safe. Take care. Keep learning. Thanks.